Hello, I'm Robert Wolff.
And I'm Gabriel Peterson.
And I'm Michael Hall.
And welcome to Innovation Coffee. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Innovation Coffee, brought to you by ARM. Once again, I'm Robert Wolff.
And I'm Gabriel Peterson.
And I'm Michael Hall.
I think we got to change that. I'm just going to be like, I'm Robert, this is Gabe and Mike, and welcome to Innovation Coffee. So this week, we have a lot of really cool stuff. In fact, if you've been following us on Twitter, on Discord, or any of the other social media platforms where we've been talking about this week's episode, even if you were watching last week, we will be talking about a very cool developer experience, I think we could call it, because you're going to be playing a game built by the ARM evangelists and contributed to by other folks at ARM, considering the cool artwork we have in there and all this other nice assets. But we're going to be showing you not only how Gabe built this game, the process by which he went to do it, why he chose Unity to do this game to begin with, and of course the app, what you added to it, right? I mean, like, it started out by just kind of being, I'm going to show you these pictures. It started out by just kind of being this kind of vague idea, like, hey, I want to build a Tetris game. And so he had some fun building a Tetris game, but then, you know, you showed it to me and I'm like, oh, we should get the ARM bots in there. We should get these assets built. But it ended up being quite the fun experience. And you know what I'm just realizing right now, Gabe? I'm going to do this real quick. Is the lights?
Oh yeah, the light. Oh, here. Actually, keep talking. I'll go.
Yeah, Gabe's gonna go turn them on real quick while I get this going. Our lighting is not on right now, so let's go through this brief history of kind of how this came about. So I want to say maybe like a couple years ago, Gabe, was it around there when you kind of started getting interested in building games?
So I actually have been tinkering with Unity on and off for maybe 10 years.
10 years.
But never like hardcore deep diving into it. Just I'll do some things for fun for a little bit, then I won't touch it again for 2 years, and then something
you have to relearn it all over again.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But that's the story of my life with tech. It's like do something for a little bit, get comfortable, and then stop using it, and then start all over again.
That's the truth, man.
Does that resonate with you, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've had to teach myself AWS like 6 times now.
Oh, like that. I got started building PCs in like 1997, and like I relearned it again somewhere in the mid-aughts, and now everything's different again.
Yeah, don't have to route IRQ channels anymore,
right?
Yeah, so
I have to type ATDT into my modem dial-up.
Yeah, so Gabe, you started getting into building games. And sure enough, you know, me and Gabe have been friends for, I think, like almost 20 years now going on. And so I'm always following, and I've always been a big fan of Gabe's work. Like Gabe, for those of you who don't know, maybe I've mentioned this, but me and Gabe have been doing ARM related activities back before I even worked at ARM. So I used to be an ARM innovator. ARM used to have a program called the ARM Innovator Program. This has since transitioned to the ARM Developer Program. But as an ARM innovator, me and Gabe actually built what we called the Extreme Edge Self-Sustainable ARM Mobile Workstation.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember that name, because even working on it, I never remembered.
That's quite a mouthful. Is that an acronym or something?
Well, so this was the cool thing about this was that it had so many applications, and I knew that I wanted to build this kind of mobile hotspot and workstation that was not only weatherproof but self-sustainable. And I've always loved building these solar powered stations. So working with sustainable energy, whether it's solar or wind, I'm very comfortable for some reason, calculating the solar wattage, the voltages, the currents, putting them in parallel and in series, syncing those up with the battery storage and the inverter and the charge controller, and getting everything kind of plugged in and seeing when it starts working, I'm just like, oh yes, finally. But then putting this out in the wild, or for example, in a village that doesn't have access to internet. And you could get this to be a kind of wireless or mobile hotspot where the village can connect to this internet hotspot. It's self-sustainable. It connects to, now you have like Starlink and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But this was before Starlink. And so I wanted to kind of build something like this, and we were toying with LTE. Anyways,
well, it's also significantly cheaper than Starlink.
That's
That
true.
was one of the goals of the project, was affordability.
And also the ability to build it yourself, because you were the one who created all the 3D printing assets for it. And so you could actually go and 3D print this all yourself and buy the materials. We had the bill of materials up there. Anyways, that tangenting off. So we started off doing that, and then we ended up building some other cool stuff together. And Gabe actually built one of the video games for the ARM arcade that was present during the ARM Dev Summit. I think it was 2020 or 2021 during the beginning of COVID. And so me and Gabe have done this stuff before. And it only dawned on me that, hey, you know what a cool experience would it be if we found a way to connect the developer or ARM community with the folks inside of ARM. Now, caveat here, this is the origins of this. So we are at only the beginning of this particular, I want to say, long-term goal. The long-term goal is to create this huge arcade filled with a ton of games, some simpler, some that do not really utilize the full potential of ARM compute. But we want to graduate this slowly into some very robust and very, I want to say, action-packed, compute-intensive games. And that's the goal, right?
Well, and also part of the initial issue, or not issue, but the reason that you'll see it's two knockoff games of like older or kind of classic games is that it was something I was just doing on the side for fun, and we found that it could apply to an event. So we very quickly transformed it into something ARM related. And then from there, we figured, okay, this is a good foundation for moving forward. But it's not like we planned ahead of time that, we're going to do this thing, so pick these games. It's the other way around.
Yeah. Gabe was having fun. He was learning. He built these kind of games because they were, I want to say, not necessarily easier, but they were interested you.
Well, so I was doing Tetris because I wanted to see how people structured larger projects. So I actually started going along with a course just for the very beginning, because I knew how to make games, but because I did everything myself, I never knew how people structured it or like what conventions were. So I wanted to see from people who had more experience, how they were doing it. And then I just branched off and did my own thing. And then the Flappy Birds knockoff was because I wanted to do everything without looking anything up. So it's like, all right, how well do I know Unity and how well do I know the code base? Can I do anything without using Google at all? I got close, but it never... if the internet completely went down, I'd have issues.
Yeah, I think we'd all have issues if the internet went down.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody could program anything without being able to Google. Like, I've got years of experience in Python, and I still have to Google like system function calls.
Oh yeah,
I just go to my paperback books. What do you, the internet? What is it?
I love paperback books for programming. Actually, that's how I learned like C++ and Python and things like that. But if you just need to look up, okay, what are the functions that do this thing? Flipping through a book is very slow.
So
there's no control F in a paper book. That's the problem.
Yeah. I want to say hi to 1DS20EC194_ Sidhanth Hello.
I think you could have omitted the beginning of that.
Yes. Hello, Sidhanth V. Jane. Welcome to Innovation Coffee. Yeah, thanks for saying hi. So I want to let you know, we talked about why the kind of history of this, and then Gabe kind of, taking the initiative to really adapt these games. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. We did mention that Gabe built these games specifically initially for the open sauce event. So this was an event that was held in San Francisco at Pier 35 last month. In fact, towards the middle, actually right in the middle of last month.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And so here's a picture of Gabe getting his demo set up. Now, in the preview of this episode, we did mention, or I mentioned, that we wanted to talk about a few things. Number one, Gabe, and we'll ask you all these questions in sequence. I just want to list out kind of the order of operations here. But number one is, Gabe, why did you choose to use Unity? Right. Number two is, in this picture, I can see that you're not running this on your personal computer, laptop, and or whatever. at home, you're running this on a nice little single board computer, which happens to be the Orange Pi. So number 2, why did you choose the Orange Pi? You know, there were other options out there, and possibly talk about how someone at home could get this flashed onto their ARM device. And then, of course, I would like to go through kind of the nuts and bolts of the game itself. And then to have some fun, we're going to share a link to a Dropbox where you can go download this game for yourself, be it on Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can also get the APK from this drive we're going to send you, and you can download this and you can flash it onto your own ARM devices. You can play this at home, and of course, eventually we will be putting this up on a web browser. And the ultimate goal of having it as a mobile app on your phone that you can download through the Google Play Store or Apple Store and really start having fun and engaging with us and trying to beat our scores. I promise you will not be able to beat my floppy bot score.
I actually had to make floppy bots more difficult at the event. Like literally we were at the booth and I was doing a build where I made it slightly more difficult because Robert was able to just play like nonstop. So it's still at that slightly more difficult level, but it does seem to be easier on your home computer than on the Orange Pi. I don't know if that's just because of the setup we have and just like being at the booth and everything feels a little bit more difficult, but you got 17, I think.
I got 17 just this morning. I was practicing. I was preparing for this battle. So here you can see it kind of set up here. You can see the Raspberry or the Orange Pi right here. You know, here's the Floppy Bots game. You can see me kind of toying around with the Bot Blocks game over here. And then here's Gabe yelling at some passerbys.
I was talking nicely. That's just a weird moment for the photo to be taken. Eh?
Yeah. So Gabe gets angry when people ask him questions about his game.
Leave me alone.
I'm trying to work here. But yeah. All right.
We should meme that.
Cool. All right. So Gabe, question number 1. And Michael, you know, I don't want to not acknowledge that you're here. If you have questions, obviously, please bring those forward as well as any sort of tangential discussions we may have. And, you know, before I go into these questions, I want to remind everyone that if you're liking this episode, make sure you smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So Gabe, why Unity?
So back when I started, the 2 choices, if you wanted complete freedom and you wanted to program your games, it was pretty much between Unreal and Unity. Unreal was great if you, at least at the time, had a bigger team and wanted to knock something out, especially if it was going to be more of like a first-person shooter, which their engine is kind of geared towards, or at least back then it was geared towards. Unity was great if you wanted to do things by yourself or with a really small team, just a couple people. And one of the other perks was you also get to use C# with it. And whereas if you did Unreal, most people use Blueprints, which is kind of like a building block node-based system, but you could also use C++. Obviously, me wanting to do it by myself and having experience with .NET, it was kind of like an easy choice. I believe Godot existed at the time. I think Godot's technically even slightly older than Unity, but it was something for like hardcore hobbyists. You didn't really, if you wanted to do anything seriously, you weren't doing it at the time. If I could go back and choose now, I might be leaning a little bit more towards Godot just because I love their whole open source mentality and everything like that. Although it's not as good for 3D work as Unity or Unreal is. But if you're doing 2D games, it's excellent. But that was the primary reason why Unity. It's also completely free to use. I think there's some conditions to that. I think you have to start paying money if you make like over $100,000 in revenue and it's a certain percentage. Don't quote me on any of that. I know it's free up until, like, if you're a hobbyist, you're not going to have to pay. Unreal too. Unreal has different conditions, but I
wonder how it's going to work with us because we don't plan on making any money on this. We just want to just publish it and let everyone have it for free and have fun with it.
Yeah, and in that case, they're not going to take a share of nothing. Like, yeah. So there's not like a fee. Oh,
20% of zero is still zero.
They do have per seat fees if you want to do certain things. Like I pay for, I don't know what it is, a couple $100 a year, and it allows me to do things like have no Unity splash screen when you start it up, or custom splash screens.
Oh, gotcha.
I did want to acknowledge that we used Unity, so I didn't make use of that option. You'll see when you start this game up, you do get the Unity splash screen, and that was deliberate on my part. But for anyone who wants to get started, like, Unity is great. Unreal is also great nowadays, even if you're small time getting started. It is more demanding, and you're not going to make more like local small lightweight games. You're going to make heavy PC games for it, or consoles. And then Godot is also they just released 4.0 at the beginning of this year, so it's come a long way, and it's a great option as well.
Mike, did you want to say something? I see
Yeah, so you mentioned that you can use was it C# as a programming language within Unity. Is that actual C# or is it just like a C# like language? Can you bring in like C# libraries from that weren't meant for Unity and use those?
Yes, with conditions. So it's not using .NET. It's actually using the Mono framework. So most C# it's not fully up to date with, like, you can't find out what Microsoft just released in the latest C# and go ahead and use it. But they do have most of the common things. You could use Link in it. You can use like all the things you would typically use. Some things like that I discovered, Newtonsoft's JSON you can't use. You have to use a Unity implementation for parsing JSON. And there's some weird little things, but for the most part, it's full C#.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Nice. So let's kind of I think will be fun to just pull this game up real quick, Gabe, because I would like to just show people watching as just to see what this game looks like. Now, there is one thing here that will make it difficult for us. The game is very loud. Gabe will be adding a mute button in there.
Yeah. So I was literally working on this game till like late yesterday, just because of various things. And it was on my list of things to do, but it should have been higher.
It's fine if you're just playing by yourself, but like, yeah, when you're trying to talk at the same time, you get that like it makes it hard to think about what you're gonna say when you're hearing all the
I don't think people watching can hear this. Michael, can you hear it?
No, we're not getting that audio.
So it's just us who can hear it. But real quick, I just want to kind of walk people through this so people have an idea as to what Gabe is going to be talking about here. So number one, we have the full arcade here, kind of the high level dashboard. Now this dashboard has a top score or high scores list here. So you have bot blocks on the left, you have floppy bots on the right. Now, on top of that, on the left side, you kind of have this menu. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to continue to evolve over time. So let's click on the first game here, bot blocks. Bot blocks. The music changes. You won't hear this music, but we will be sharing this.
You could have shared it on your screen.
Oh, too. Could I have? Oh, that would have probably been better, huh? Either way, here you go. You can kind of like play. This is like a game of Tetris. We call it bot blocks, of course. You know, bring it down quicker. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, you're supposed to move.
I totally screwed that up.
Not getting a high score on this one.
No, I'm not gonna get a high score. I'm actually, how do I leave this?
The pause button.
Pause button. Leave. Just okay, back to main menu.
I like those little cards too, because they're the old ones. I never got around to changing them out. They're also on my list of things to do. That's why the aesthetic doesn't match like the nice assets that Hoatong and Chris Salvador did for us.
It's hard to talk when we have all this music going on.
That's why I had to put it off on air. Yeah.
All right. Next one, we have floppy bots. And, you know, funny story here is we actually pitched Flappy Bots, but the design team came back with floppy bots and we just loved it. So we kept it. So here's floppy bots. And again, like I said, we are going to do a competition between Michael, Gabriel, and myself. And then we will share a link so you all can download this and share your scores with us if you wanted to play with us.
But the high scores are network connected. So it is a global leaderboard.
They are on the network, right? So we can see everyone else's high scores. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see.
Somebody please beat the high score.
Tech a little later for how I did that.
Damn it. One more time. Wait, I want to go one more time here before.
So for everyone watching, Robert is very competitive when it comes to games. And this one especially, nobody's been able to beat his high scores since we started playing it at Open Sauce.
Okay, there we go. All right. So let's get out of this now.
Yeah, and okay, now I can actually hear things.
Oh my gosh.
Michael was talking and I could see his lips moving, but
what did you say, Mike?
Oh, I was just telling everybody watching to beat your high score because you've been at the top of the leaderboard since open source on that game.
No one's gonna beat me. Good luck. Yeah. But yeah, so okay, Gabe, we just saw the game. We saw the dashboard. Yeah. We saw the two games. Now let's walk through the different components, because usually when you build a game like this, or let's just call it an application in general, you have a front end, you have a back end, and then you have some sort of linking between those two. Is that correct?
Yes, but with the sake of game engines, it acts as both the front end and the back end.
Gotcha.
Because you're doing all the coding that you're doing is actually more aligned with scripting than like full programming, because, and I can show some of it on my screen.
Let's check that out.
And let me bring this over.
Yes. So yeah, walk us through start to finish. Like when you first started this app, what did you start with? And then let's just kind of go down the line.
Yeah, so what I was going to show, just to answer your front end back end question, is you'll see these lines like find first object by type, so what's happening is you're creating components. Everything in Unity, this gets a little boring if you're not really into it, but everything is game objects, and then all the game objects have components on them. And then, so if I go and I add something to, and if I go to a scene with an actual game like Floppy Bots, there's these components, and you have things like colliders, rigid bodies, which add physics, and then the scripts. And so this script here is it's not the exact one I was looking at, but it's one of these that's then grabbing the components that you're dealing with and messing around with them programmatically.
So you insert the components, and then you use the script to interact with the components.
Yeah, but the game engine itself is doing all the heavy lifting. So I don't have to write anything physics related. That's not just like adding force or adding torque or things like that.
Yeah, like in Floppy Bots, when you hit the pipe, it falls down and then like rolls.
Yeah.
Or the weight of the bot whenever you hit spacebar.
Yeah, so I didn't program those things in, for instance. I made use, like I set them and I made use of them, but Unity's handling all the complex physics calculations. And
so you just say like there's gravity here, this object is affected by gravity.
Exactly. And then you're saying add this much force to it or that kind of thing.
Do you get to dictate how heavy heavy gravity is?
Oh yeah. So there's times when you'll do something like it's literally physics.gravity times equals. So if you want to modify gravity, you can do the same thing with like time scale because of how it handles time.
So that way you could say like, oh, the gravity on the moon is this, and thus I could make it feel like when I hit spacebar, it's like I'm jumping on the moon.
And it's not uncommon for you to do something where you want physics to be applicable, but you want it to be not affected by gravity. So say you're modeling something and on your screen, it looks up and down, but you want to pretend like it's a top-down view. So you don't want gravity pulling what would be sideways in your game.
Yeah.
So you can actually turn gravity off in those instances. But
like the old Grand Theft Auto. When you're top down.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you want to do things like that, you could still have it affected by physics, but just modifying gravity to suit your own needs. And then there's just a lot of this. So every little thing, you're just interacting with these game objects in your own way and defining things. It's a lot of files, but once you get the core concept down, it's really simple. I think.
And the assets.
Yes.
Like getting the assets, because I mean, I remember talking to you about this, is like you could go to these asset stores and there are some unlicensed assets where you can just grab them. There are also asset packages that you can pay for. So for people at home that want to build their own game, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm familiar with the Unity engine. I need to get some assets now. It's like, oh, well, good luck, or hire an artist.
Yeah, because there's situations where you want temporary assets to take place because it just makes the game feel more complete. Like I took part, actually, me and my wife took part in the GMTK Game Jam that just happened because she's an artist. So I did the programming, she did the art. But you should see the first versions of the game because it looks so ugly. Because while she's still working on the art, I need temporary stand-ins. So I'm literally putting like boxes and random colors so things stand out and I know what's what. And it just looks like garbage. So if you have the ability to just go and grab great looking assets, knowing that you'll replace them later, it just makes it feel a lot better.
Yeah, it looks like I got a comment here from Rebecca Cran, who's on Discord, saying that some of the links in in the YouTube description are broken. We'll need to check on that, Rebecca. And thank you for bringing that up. It does look like the ARM developer one is broken. I don't know how it is broken, but yeah, we'll definitely get that fixed. I can't imagine that the other ones are. The ARM software one should be fine. And the other ARM software.
The GitHub, that should be different, shouldn't it?
Yeah, we need to get that one changed. That's the old GitHub org. We need to get that changed to the ARM developer ecosystem.
Yeah, it's funny. It's the type of thing that I've pasted often, but because you do it so often, you don't actually read the links on what you're pasting, and I like something like that would have stood out to me right away that's wrong.
Yeah, we'll get that fixed, Rebecca, and we'll make sure we check on that. And thank you for bringing it up. Great point. Oh, look, she said that the GitHub link actually goes to this instead of
even though it looks like there's just some weird URL encoded bits on the end there.
I mean, it's still the wrong name anyway.
Yeah. We'll definitely get that fixed. Yeah, no problem. And thank you for bringing that up. It really, it helps when people help us find these things because, we get so used to the order that we do things in, and sometimes things break. But yes.
Also, it's just juggling a lot of things, producing these episodes and getting everything working. Like even getting my game, it's like when I first got into the studio, I checked everything, it worked, and then I check it again like an hour ago and it's not working, and it's because the AWS instance I was running on needed to be rebooted.
But that's kind of normal, especially when you don't sacrifice before a demo. You have to make a sacrifice, Gabe. I mean,
I didn't appease the demo gods.
Yes. So, okay, Gabe, let's get back into this because I do want to kind of like cover more of the technical assets or the things that people at home might be interested in, or developers working on this. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's look at, okay, yeah, this is cool. Looking at something like this. So show us how. Let's just say someone at home has an asset.
Yeah.
They want to apply something to this asset. Can you build something for us here? Can you show us kind of like the process that you went through in order to get this going?
Yeah, so I can show you. Like if I wanted to create a new object, like a new player or something, so I could say create empty. There's a little.
Oh, I have an idea, Gabe. Sorry for interrupting you.
Sure.
Like, what if we wanted to put two bots here that you controlled with two buttons? So you had like spacebar and M, and you actually had to get them both going.
Like player one and player two.
So I will say that would be easy to do, but in the confines of this show, it would be quite difficult. One, watching someone code is not exactly the most exciting.
No, it's super exciting. They love it. No, okay, I get it though.
But yeah, I was just gonna say, like real quick, you can add a empty game object. You would add a component like a sprite renderer. If I could type right. Or I'll just do this. I do a shortcut, but I was trying to build it from 2D objects, sprites.
So you're just importing a 2D object?
So it is a sprite render. It just wasn't popping up, or I wasn't seeing it. But it's an empty game object, and you add this component. Then you could add something like, oh, I wanted to have gravity. So I'll add a rigid body, and because I'm making a 2D game, I'll add and then I want it to be able to collide with things, so I'd add a collider, and you'd pick the appropriate shape, capsule collider, 2D, I would choose, and so on. And then you say, okay, I want to modify the behaviors of those things now. So I'm going to add a script. So you create a C# script, just create C# script, and then have it do some things. And then you just literally drag it onto the item, adds it there. And then I'll open up this script to show you kind of what it is. Like, obviously it would be blank and you'd add things, but you do things like you start getting components. Okay, I want to talk to the rigid body. So now I'm giving it a global variable or a private variable, and I'm just using the engine's method to get that component. Now that I have that component, I can do things with it, like rigid body velocity. Okay, this one, I'm just telling it to, I'm not letting it used to, when I first made the game, like you could, if you hit spacebar a bunch, it just got flung because it was adding the velocity onto each other, and it was just a giant curve. So it's like, okay, here I'm just fixed update is in line with the physics engine, the cycles of the physics engine, just clamp the magnitude. That's all that's doing. And then I'm doing things like rigid body constraints. That's making it so it could rotate and not rotate. But you just take these, if the velocity's over a certain amount, do these certain things. So you're manipulating those objects you grabbed earlier, and that's the core concept of how Unity works.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that Unity actually has a very decent starting section. I believe it's learn.unity.com, and let's see if learn.unity.com if you're not sure if you actually want to invest time into learning but do want to start tinkering with it, they have these things like these little courses, and they're quick, they get you to the point, they get you into building fun little games. I actually did this after one of those gaps when I wanted a refresher. I watched a few of the videos and did a few of the sections just as a refresher because it's so fast paced. But it doesn't go into depth into anything, but it's a great if you just want a taste of it. And then if you do want to actually dive into it, Udemy has these courses by gamedev.tv people. You can also just go straight to gamedev.tv, where they do like a 3D course and a 2D course, and you can pick one or the other. And I've done them in the past, and I was a big fan. They work well, they explain everything well, and they also go into detail in some conventions and why you should do things a certain way, which is really helpful when you figured out the how, but you want to know the why, and you just want to also know better strategies for doing it. So that would be.
So Gabe, real quick, I just shared a link right now. Oh, sorry, Mike. Did you want to say something? I don't know.
Go ahead with yours first.
Yeah, so I just shared a link right now to the ARM Developer Arcade. This is a Dropbox link that'll enable anyone there to download it onto their computer. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's on Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. Of course, you can also get the APK there and flash it onto an ARM device. Now, in Android ARM device, right?
Yes. Though keep in mind, you're going to want it to be a single board computer ARM device because there are no touch controls built in.
Yeah.
Actually, if you play that APK, you'll be playing the exact same version that was at the event. So there are some bugs that I have not fixed yet, and there are some other. It has a local leaderboard only. It doesn't have the
we definitely recommend downloading for this particular purpose. Like if you just want to have fun and experiment or experience the process of flashing this onto your ARM device, then you could do the APK. But for this particular case, we recommend downloading the Windows, Linux, or Mac version that will go onto your computer, and that has the global leaderboard. So we will actually see your scores pop up here.
There's no install necessary for those. The only thing you'll get is on Windows.
Why don't you show them, Gabe, real quick on your computer how to download it? Go to your Dropbox, download it, and reinstall it real quick.
Okay, well, let me go to my link where it's nice recursive. I don't know. I meant to.
Oh, yeah, I guess I could pop this up there, right there. This is where we're going. So we're going over here. We're going to the Dropbox, and we're going to download.
So they can see our private secret chat right now.
Yay.
So anyway, yeah, you just go here. You'll get the files. They're available for download. You're going to unzip them in the case of everything but the APK. They are unsigned. So when you're like, it won't ask me because obviously I've already ran it. But on Mac, you'll probably need to control right click and select open.
I didn't have to do it.
It seems hit and miss. I had to do it on the studio computer, but I didn't have to do it I tried it on Pauline's computer. So I don't know why Apple decides to require it on some machines and not others. But if it doesn't allow you to open it, you may have to control right click, select open. And then for Windows, it'll probably give you that blue warning, and then you say more info, then you say run anyway. Again, these just run directly off the file wherever you have it unzipped, so you don't have to worry about installs, but just something to be aware of. The controls, which I didn't put because this was intended to be on the web. Actually having download versions was a workaround because of the global leaderboard. I'll get into that whole.
Oh, Alan says that the Linux version works perfectly.
Oh, great. I actually did not have a Linux machine available when I did the build. So I was just like, all right, I'll do the build. Let's see if it works.
I'm curious. I want to see Alan get a high score on the floppy bots, or at least all you have to do is get above a 3 so that you can show up on the leaderboard. And I want to see it show up on the leaderboard here.
I will say if you because I didn't make it, it was on my list of things to do. Just another thing I ran out of time. If you get a high score, it's not that obvious. A little thing will pop up at the bottom below the restart button that asks for your name, and then there's a submit button. So you just type in your name and you hit submit. But it's not as obvious I'd like, and it also doesn't accept enter for submitting. It's one of those things that'd be really easy to do, but I just
have to click submit. Yeah.
I just didn't. Again, list of things to do.
After we go through this, Gabe, let's finish the whole process here. So click download, boot up the game so that people can see how that's done. But then I want to do the challenge. I want to see which one of us three get the high score.
Okay. Before we do that, Gabe, can you what was the process to build this for Windows, Mac, and Linux and an APK?
This is actually, I'll show you. It's very easy. This is one of the best things about Unity. No matter what you want to build it for, even if you want to build it for consoles, if you're lucky enough to own a development console, it can do so. But you just go to File, Build Settings. You choose what you have, what platform. Now, the only platforms that show up are platforms that I have installed the modules for. So there's way more options than this.
You just literally, that's how easy it was for you to build. You just choose it.
Yeah, you choose it. Now you do have to tinker with some of the settings. Like you go to player settings and then you get it like this is. So there's other settings. Some of the things you may have to mess with are I had to allow over HTTP, and I'll get into why in a little bit. Some of the things I had to fix it to a certain resolution. When I was doing a web GL build, I had to do some other settings. So you may have to tinker with things a little bit, but it is really once you get the build setting, choose the platform, choose the target platform, hit build, and then it generates the file.
Awesome. And those are the files that people are downloading?
Yes.
Okay. No viruses?
No. No, I wouldn't do that to anyone.
You can trust this publisher.
Yeah, let's just trust Gabe. Let's just trust him. Look at this guy.
My completely unsigned app that uses
Gabe is very trustworthy. If Robert published this game, though.
Oh, yeah, be careful. Okay, so okay, now let's go back. So now we've shown people how to build it. I know that this wasn't exactly a step-by-step process,
no,
right?
That would be way too long.
Yeah, the purpose of this episode was more to kind of have some fun and show people some stuff that we did. So yeah, anyways, so now you've downloaded it. That's the download.
Yeah. Right? And then so you, depending on what you have, obviously, for Mac, it's going to be named Mac OS 3 because yes, I was doing that annoying convention where I'd test something. It wouldn't be quite right. So I just iterate the name for the next build.
Mac OS real final this time.
I swear I was using version control for the actual source content or source code, but I don't use version control for my builds. In fact, my builds folder is on my git ignore because otherwise it ends up being gigantic. But you
double click it, that's it.
Yeah, and again, you may get prompted with something. If not, you'll know it's working correctly if you see names here because it is pulling from the server. None of these scores are stored locally, and then it's literally you can click on any of the buttons to get started, or if you just want to see who is involved with what, you can click credits. See me programming, Hoatong, Chris Salvador, who did these awesome art assets, which really, if you saw the game before, it wasn't as trash as my normal programmer art was, but it was pretty bad. Yeah, and then you can just go into the game. So for floppy bots, listing the controls would have been also on my list of things to do. Floppy bots is just spacebar. I didn't get a hard score, so it didn't prompt me. So spacebar is the move for that, but it's simple enough. So I'll go back to the main menu and show bot blocks because that's the more complex controls. So this is WASD to move around. A and D move left and right. Holding on S moves down fast. And then W slams down, and then spacebar rotates. So if I just want to slam down instantly, it'll do that. Oh, it's hard to see because of the reflection. I was like, didn't I get a line? But no, I missed something. And then Q puts your piece in the hold. So if you want to save it for later, that's what Q does. And then, I'll go back to the main menu so we can compete again. These garbage menu screens are some examples of my temporary assets that I never replaced. Again, just
I'm getting my computer set up so that I can also share my screen and play right now.
Yeah.
Now, Gabe, you gave us that cheat code so we can beat Robert, right?
I should have. It's actually very easy to add like code capabilities and stuff like that. When I made the ARM game years back, that Rocket game for the Dev Summit, one of the things that I got feedback with my early builds was that it's too difficult. So I made some buttons so you could just skip the levels and like go through all the levels. One of the things you end up learning when you build games is you're constantly playing it. So you get good at it. So what seems like a good difficulty level to you is going to be too hard for most others. And so it's really good to have other people test your games.
This is me playing.
Yeah, it is. So close. Yeah, and it's this level of difficulty simply because of Robert. And I do apologize for how loud the music is. If you're playing the game on your own machine, a mute and a volume control for the whole thing was on the list. I was getting this all done so it could be ready for today. And one of the big priorities was getting networking working so we could have a global leaderboard, because that was the most fun aspect for me.
So Gabe, are these pipes is the course pre-made, or is the code generating these as you go?
It's semi-generating them. So they're something called a prefab where you
no
28. Are you kidding me?
That beats my open source score.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So make sure to put this is where I was saying it's kind of hard to see the screen.
My open source score, I spent 2 days trying to beat the score of 21 and I just beat 28.
All right. So Gabe, what were you saying about how the pipes are generated?
Yeah, so they're prefabs. And what happens is I'm doing a process in the very initial. The core concept is you instantiate them and then have them randomly place from a spawn location that's off screen. And then you have it move and then it despawns when it goes off screen. I do something slightly more complex where I use an object pooler, which is more performant. For a game like this, you really don't need to. Instantiating and destroying the objects, while more resource intensive, is fine for something like this, but it's good practice to do a process called object pooling where you load all of them ahead of time, like a set amount, and then you're essentially hiding and rehiding and relocating them. So it's never having to create and destroy objects. It saves some resources on the machine that it's running. And it's also why if you play some old games like Counter-Strike, you'll remember being able to shoot bullets and having the bullet holes. If you keep shooting, they start to disappear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's because it was pooling the objects and only storing a certain amount in memory and just recycling those same ones. It's just a lot easier than ending up with like 100,000 of an object if you're shooting bullets constantly, like in the game.
Yeah. Were there any resource constraints you had to take into consideration running this on an Orange Pi?
There were some. Mainly the reason I stuck to 2D games, like the Orange Pi probably could have done 3D, but it's running off of. And so I should clarify, the hardware itself is more than adequate to even run like mild 3D games on an Orange Pi.
Oh my God.
But the drivers that are involved for the graphics are not that solid. So I was encountering some performance bottlenecks that I shouldn't have. Yeah, this is ridiculous.
How do you win this game?
You already have, Robert.
Yeah, I need to detect when Robert's playing. And
No!
Also, I need to randomize pipe spacing. It's a set spacing now.
62?
Yeah, I got distracted by a 62.
Yeah. None of us are beating that. Like, I'm lucky if I can get
Okay.
through 2
I
fights.
think it's Michael's turn to get on here.
Yeah. So it's funny. One of the big problems I had, one of the things I spent the last several days doing is setting this up for a global leaderboard. And I used an ARM-based AWS EC2 instance with DynamoDB. It's been over a decade since I've used AWS last, or at least it feels like that. I've never used an EC2 instance. I've never used DynamoDB. In fact, I've never really had any experience with a NoSQL database, and I chose it because it's like, I'm learning something new. I should learn a bunch of things new and not go SQL or PostgreSQL or something like that, even though that would have been easier. And that was kind of a mistake. Probably should have, for this sake, went with something I was familiar with, but I got it working. But I encountered a bunch of little interesting problems along the way. One of them that I think my solution is fun but jank is that I made the primary key the username. And those of you who know the databases can probably see the problem right away, but it's just one of those things that I did not see until I actually did it, in that, it's the primary key. You can only have one of each username. So if you create a high score, and you put in the same name, it just overwrites your existing high score. So, and it's like, I could have completely redone the database, or I could have redone the code, but it's like I was running out of time. So my solution is actually your username.
I can't hear a thing y'all are saying right now.
I know. So the username is just, it's the username you put, but I also append the current UCT date time at the moment of the high score to the beginning of it. And then because I've set it to be a set number of characters, I just remove that when displaying it on the screen. So your high score is not Bob. Your high score is like 2023-08-03.
But I make it Bob.
Well, and then followed by Bob.
Yeah,
and
gotcha.
Then so it's like, okay, that's janky, but it works. So whatever.
Yeah.
So that's how the high scores are stored.
Oh, it looks like we have someone else in there. Bex, whoever Bex is. Bex got 6.
Nice.
Bex did better than me. You all
and
saw
Bex
my tragic failure there.
Yeah, Bex got 6, and looks like Bex also got 80 on bot blocks. Congratulations, Bex, on making the high leaderboard.
Yeah, and then one of the whole things that was fun for me was I wanted this to be global. So I also wanted it to be on a browser. So there's a site I use, itch.io, which is just great for storing your games if you want other people to play it. You can provide download files there, but the nice thing is you can also do WebGL builds, which allow people to play the game inside the browser without having to download anything. The problem I ran into is, because the way I set up the server, I'm using HTTP and not HTTPS. That is not because I didn't want to. In fact, I'm still waiting on the certificate authority to issue my SSL certificate that I have, but it's because there was all these, I didn't have an SSL certificate, so I couldn't do it. So it was like, okay, quickly, I'll do HTTP while I'm in the process of getting my SSL certificate and setting everything up.
I want to get 100. Damn it!
But browsers don't allow you to, and I'm going to garble the reason why, but my understanding is that they essentially just don't allow you to go to third-party HTTP addresses from within a certain address. So even if you run the game locally from your own web server on your machine, it won't grab the leaderboard because it's like you're trying to grab a different HTTP link. And so that's shifty. We're not going to allow you to do it. So I don't have the web version running at the moment. I will, but there's a few things I have to do. It should be easy once I just get that certificate. The backend is also running on ASP.NET Core. I made an API program that it's doing some normal CRUD operations to the EC2 instance. And that's how it's writing and reading the scores. I'm also using Nginx to handle the port routing. It's so basic. The controller that I'm using is It's funny. It took me like no time to write, because if you need to write a API backend in .NET Core, they've just made it so easy and streamlined, especially for something like this, where normally I would go through the effort of doing a repository pattern and using interfaces, adding the complexity, but really allowing you to have a lot more flexibility in your program. For this, I didn't bother with any of that. It's literally just a straightforward controller to grab everything.
I see you kept the speed. It speeds up quicker still.
Yes, so
it's speeding up a lot.
Yeah, this is one of those things. I did this for the event, because the whole thing was, well, Tetris normally ramps up kind of slow. We don't want people staying at the game for like hours because they can. So I made it ramp up. I did not fix that. It's actually very, very easy to fix. And it's, hey, you got a high score. But it's just one of those things that I didn't bother to do out of time concerns or other priorities. One of the things that's really cool that you can do when you program games and you write your scripts is you can create things that are called serialized fields, which allow you to assign values to variables from within Unity rather than from within the code itself. Like you can give it an initial value, but then from within the code editor or from within the game editor, you can tweak values. You can even tweak the values while you're playing. So it's really much easier than the old school way of like tweaking a value, then doing a build and then run, and then tweaking a value, build and run. It's like you can tweak values mid test run and see how things come out and then change the values after that. You didn't even bother registering your high score even though you got one.
If I don't get 100, I don't care anymore.
It's funny because one of the things that would be fun to do with my own program, just to come full circle, is I know Code Bullet, the YouTuber that was at Open
We
Source.
actually met him.
Yeah, one of the things when I was just kind of checking out his content is he wrote a AI program to play Flappy Bird for him.
Oh yeah.
Just to look at the screen and do the controls for him and everything like that, and to learn and do it by learning. So that would be kind of fun to do, especially if I added more complexity. Like,
no, Gabe, you got to beat me without AI, bro.
I mean, I could beat you without AI by cheating. I could temporarily on my own build make the pipes like super wide and just
tell them about the exploit. Tell them about the exploit that one of the kids found.
Oh yeah, so it's not something that you can use to game the score, but it's one of those things that, like, kids make great game testers. One of the kids found out that you could just go up as high as you want.
Is it still exploited?
Yeah, if I didn't fix that. Yeah. So technically your guy's still flying, but I didn't bother making the pipes.
Isn't it like that Mario Brothers 3 thing where you fly up top?
But you don't get a score if you don't go through the pipes.
Yeah, it's just.
And then eventually, if you fall, you'll eventually hit one of the pipes.
Fortunately, I made it's a little trigger. So when I kind of mentioned that we use box colliders, and then colliders are one of the things you can add to a game object. It's a component that adds functionality. Well, you can add a collider and then check a box that makes it a trigger, so you don't actually collide with it. It just triggers things in code, and then you can say, if this triggers this, do this. And so I made a little invisible box in between the pipes that's kind of narrow, that if you touch it, it increments the score. But fortunately, I only made it as tall as the gap between the pipes. I didn't make it like a really tall line, which also would have been an easy thing to do. It actually would have been easier because when you're tinkering with the gap between the pipe, every time I would then have to go and I would have to adjust the trigger.
Which means then the exploit would have gotten you score.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those things that it was good that I didn't do it, but
that would have been interesting if you did, and then the kid figured it out and got like hundreds of points. Sat there hitting the space bar all day.
I mean, if you want,
just sat there at the top score and you'd never be able to reach it.
Yeah. And then he didn't tell us about the exploit, and I'm like, how the heck did he do that?
Well, that's the great thing about kids too, is when they find out how they broke something, they want to show that off. So
oh yeah.
So that kid was very excited to show that he was able to break my game at the event. Also,
all right, Robert, we're going to have to interrupt your game because we're coming up to the end of the hour.
Yeah.
No, wait, let me get my high score. 1 second, almost there.
No, you're not.
One more death.
You're at 30. You got a long way to go to beat your high score.
I'm going to go. I'm going to get it. We got 4 minutes. Let's go. Gabe, talk about one more thing.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny if you played, like if you happen to have a single board. Oh, I never touched on that. Why the orange pie? So I'll touch on that really quickly.
Go.
So I used the orange Pi instead of a Raspberry Pi, which I normally would have used, because of the fact that ARM unfortunately only builds, if you want to run on ARM64 or ARM hardware on Linux, you need a build for Android. So an orange Pi was one of the few devices I knew that you could get an Android image. They call it Droid OS. I've since found out from Robert after talking to him that 96 boards also had some single board computers that you could run Android on. So, and in fact, they probably had a little bit more power. So they would have been cool to try out as well. But that's why I went with it. We even had 2 people come look at our event and then look at me disappointed. And it turns out they were from Raspberry Pi. Like they saw a single board computer with the Raspberry Pi 4 or 5. Yeah, it's like
you should have just told them it's because you couldn't buy a 4.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like Rebecca Cran is Bex. So yeah, Bex got a couple high scores there. Thanks for playing the game.
No, I would have loved to build it for.
Wait, who's put better than Bob? Oh, is that what you get, Michael?
Yeah, that
wow. All right. Cool. Any last things, Gabe?
Oh yeah. By any chance Unity ever hears this, build it for Linux ARM64. That's the only thing that you don't seem to be able to build for. So unless you're running on Android. So
we'll just have to tell them personally. I'll give you Unity's phone number.
That'd be great. Yeah. I would. It's like if you want to run it on I did get it running on a Raspberry Pi, but that was only through the janky workaround of installing Windows 11 on a Raspberry Pi first, which no one should do. It is not a good solution. And Unity can technically run on it when you do that, but it is so slow and underpowered. It is not worth it.
All right. Well, Gabe, Michael, as always, it has been a true pleasure to have you both here hosting with me, and look forward to future episodes here. Gabe, you want to give your Reddit plug? Use Red Hat. No, your Reddit plug.
Hey, I do use Fedora as my distro of choice for laptops, but yeah. So the Reddit is Reddit ARM software dev.
Oh, we don't have it up here, huh?
We do have a link for it.
Oh yeah, subreddit right here.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, I post daily for cool things I find that are built on ARM, but it doesn't have to just be me. Literally anyone that wants to post anything ARM related, feel free to go ahead, and I welcome that. I welcome participation. It would be cool to hear some people other than me on some of the things I post, because it's interesting. The things that I find online that people build are very interesting, and it'd be cool to have like sidebar discussions about them.
Yes, I agree. Michael, anything from you?
Go to the Discord. Join us there. Let's talk about Gabe's game. We've got links that we'll share in there. If anyone's interested in getting this, we did share the download link here in the broadcast. But if you are watching this after and you want a clickable link, just let us know in the chat.
And we do, from what I understand, Gabe, you're going to be hopefully integrating this into the Discord activities at one point, so we can challenge each other live in Discord.
So I wasn't going to mention it just yet, because it's one of those things that's like, I think I can do it, but you never want to be like, I'm going to do this thing.
I believe in you.
Then it's
you
like,
do it. I believe in you.
But yeah, Discord does provide a Unity APK. That's about the extent of the details I know on it. So I will try to get something working. Also, at some point, we want to get it running on phones, which is funny because these apps will come full circle, because when I first built them, I was building them with phones in mind. And then for the event, I had to bring it to a normal modern resolution. And I didn't even have time to go into why I locked it down to 1920 by 1080. But there were technical reasons that were real time. It was just I ran out of time for certain things.
That's all right. We'll have a follow-up on this, probably a couple months from now, Gabe, where we can refer back to this episode and be like, wow, look how far we've come. But it'll be fun.
And we will be creating original games. They won't just be knockoff. Again, the games came first, the ARM arcade came second. So now the original games will come next.
Yes. All right, cool. So Michael, Gabe, thanks once again. Everyone who watched at least even a small portion of this episode, and or whether or not you're watching on demand, we appreciate your time as well. We look forward to seeing you next week. As a reminder, make sure you join our Discord server. Of course, we'd love it if you came and joined our developer program. You can get there by going to arm.com/developer program or arm.com/resources/developer-program. We'd love it also if you entertained checking out our developer hub. If you are a developer out there and you are looking for some cool stuff to build or a nice community of developers to contribute to or collaborate with, you can go to the arm.com/developer-hub. This is a great way for you to get involved with us as well as get involved with your fellow ARM developers. So I guess the last thing here is, if you enjoyed the episode, what do you do, Gabe? What do you do if you enjoy an episode on YouTube?
I guess it's a stereotypical thing. I've smashed that. What is it? Like
button? Like and subscribe button.
You annihilate that live button and you just smash the crap. I was going to say a bad word. Smash that like button and make sure you subscribe to the ARM Software Developers YouTube channel, because we do go live for episodes like this, Innovation Coffee, every single week, Thursday at 5 p.m. UTC. Don't forget to join our Discord. Hit us up for our office hours every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Y'all have a wonderful day. Take care.
Yep.
All
Peace.
right. Innovation Coffee out.